pandilleros, a los que los tenemos sin colchonetas, durmiendo en el suelo.
Van a regresar nunca a las comunidades.
Stripped to their shorts and with their heads shaved to what's been dubbed the country's new mega prison. About 64,000 suspects have been arrested, murder reports.
The El Salvador prison is by far the harshest environment for gang leaders. Relatives of those detained struggle to learn their fate. In El Salvador, gang leaders in prison don't strut in jumpsuits or demand luxuries. Instead, they face severe restrictions and isolation. And in today's episode, we will explore the stark reality of their lives behind bars. Created to accommodate the most infamous criminals in the nation, mainly from groups such as MS13 and Barrio 18, Secot Mega Prison functions in harsh conditions with the goal of minimizing their influence on society. Established during a state of emergency, Secot Mega Prison enforces a strict policy, signaling a significant shift in El Salvador's fight against gang control. The facility was built in direct reaction to increasing crime rates, aiming to cut off gang communications and interrupt their activities from the inside. The prison's design and rules are meant to cause extreme discomfort by forcing prisoners to use metal beds and providing only basic necessities. The severe conditions inside Secot are made even worse by overcrowding. Initially meant for a small number of people, the cells are now overcrowded with many detainees, leading them to have to share cramped space, take turns sleeping because of the lack of beds, and suffer from significant sanitation problems. Essential items such as food, mainly tortillas, beans, and rice, are provided in limited quantities to reflect the harsh prison environment aimed at preventing more crime. In spite of these actions, rumors continue of encoded messages and discreet cues among gang leaders, showcasing the difficulty of fully cutting off their impact. The government's firm position, supported by extensive legal actions and widespread detentions, has received both approval for its determination and backlash for its possible effects on human rights. Secot is a heavily guarded fortress of surveillance and discipline, with razor wire layers, watchtowers, and surveillance cameras. Prisoners adhere to a strict daily schedule, with careful scrutiny and numerous recounts of their actions. Mentally, living in Secot has a significant negative impact on the people there. The sudden shift from freedom to imprisonment pushes a lot of people into feelings of loneliness and hopelessness. The routine of prison life, along with the need to maintain gang connections, leads to inmates experiencing feelings of anxiety and depression. There is insufficient mental health care available, causing many individuals to manage their psychological issues on their own, frequently turning to dangerous activities such as substance abuse. Inside Secot, gang hierarchies mirror the power dynamics found on the streets. Leaders, even when isolated in confinement, uphold authority through a system of communication and allegiance. Each interaction, be it a look or movement, holds importance, determining access to resources and upholding gang regulations. Surviving in prison depends on understanding and maneuvering through complex power struggles, where disagreements can quickly turn into brutal clashes. Even though it is known for containment, Secot has only a few rehabilitation programs focusing on education, vocational training, and substance abuse treatment. These initiatives, important for individuals looking to leave gang life behind, encounter major obstacles. Engaging in a project may cause retaliation from gang members, dissuading individuals from taking advantage of these chances for transformation. The guards and inmates have a tense and sometimes understanding relationship. The impact of Secot Mega Prison extends far beyond its walls, affecting many Salvadoran families. The sudden disappearance of loved ones into the prison system leaves families in a state of uncertainty and despair. Mothers, fathers, siblings, and children struggle with the fact that their family members, whether guilty or caught in the wrong place, are now part of a large, faceless group behind bars. The lack of information and communication adds to the pain of these families. Many have gone months without any word from their loved ones who vanished into Secot. Without due process, some families may never know if their loved ones are alive or dead, let alone if they will ever come home. This collective trauma has spread through Salvadoran society, creating fear and mistrust. While some citizens see the government's crackdown as necessary to restore law and order, Others worry about the erosion of civil liberties and the risk of innocent people being caught up in aggressive policies. The story of Sekot Mega Prison is not just about fighting criminal elements. It is also about a society dealing with the consequences of its actions. As El Salvador navigates the complex issues of justice and security, the world watches the human cost of this unprecedented approach to incarceration. The state of emergency and mass incarcerations at Sekot Mega Prison have sparked a legal and ethical debate in El Salvador. The suspension of civil liberties, including the right to a fair trial and legal defense, has drawn sharp criticism from international human rights advocates and legal experts. The government's actions have raised concerns about possible violations of both domestic and international laws, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which El Salvador has signed. The usual legal framework has been disrupted, with reports suggesting that many detainees have been held without formal charges or solid evidence of criminal activity. This has led to accusations of arbitrary detention, a practice that undermines the rule of law and opens the door to potential abuses of power. Human rights organizations have condemned the dire conditions within Sekot and the broader implications for justice. They argue that the fight against gangs should not come at the expense of fundamental human rights, and that security policies must respect individual freedoms and dignity. The roots of gang violence in El Salvador are deeply connected to the country's history, marked by conflict and displacement. The Salvadoran Civil War, lasting from 1979 to 1992, left over 75,000 people dead and many more displaced. As the United States implemented tougher gang policies in the 1990s, many gang members were deported back to El Salvador, a country still recovering from the war and not equipped to handle this new threat. These deported gang members found fertile ground in the post-war chaos to transplant the gang culture from Los Angeles. This led to the explosive growth of gang violence in El Salvador, which has plagued the nation for decades. With the return of hardened gang members, gangs like MS13 and Barrio 18 began to establish their presence with unprecedented brutality. They carved out territories in the barrios of San Salvador and beyond, enforcing their rule with an iron fist. Beep, beep, and beep became their means of power as they fought not only each other, but also any authority that challenged them. The Salvadoran government, still fragile from the Civil War, was outgunned and outmaneuvered by these gangs, which quickly evolved into sophisticated criminal organizations. MS13 and Barrio 18 demanded absolute loyalty and obedience from their members, with defiance met by death. Young recruits, seeing no other path to survival, joined the gangs, marked by intricate tattoos that signified their commitment. The gangs extended their influence into rural areas, spreading fear and infiltrating communities. Businesses, public officials, and even police were targets of intimidation. The gangs' power lay not just in their numbers, but in their ability to instill terror, paralyzing entire neighborhoods and allowing them to operate with impunity. As the death toll rose and victims' cries went unanswered, the gangs' notoriety grew, making El Salvador one of the countries with the highest homicide rates in the world. The nation was in crisis, with MS13 and Barrio 18 holding it hostage to their violent whims. Families have been torn apart, not only by the loss of loved ones to gang-related homicides, but also by the forced recruitment of children. Young boys, barely in their teens, are often coerced into joining gangs under threat of violence to themselves or their families. Police officers, outgunned and outnumbered, face the near-impossible task of protecting a populace that has lost faith in their ability to curb the gang menace. Hospitals have become revolving doors for victims of gang violence. Emergency rooms regularly witness the human toll of gang warfare raging outside their walls. Schools, intended to be safe places for learning, have become recruiting grounds for gangs. Teachers report gang members infiltrating classrooms to enlist recruits or target rivals, turning safe spaces into places of fear. The psychological impact on children is profound, with many suffering from trauma and anxiety. The very fabric of Salvadoran society is under siege. In response to the gang crisis, the Salvadoran government has tried various strategies to regain control and restore order. Initially, the approach was one of brute force, reflecting the desperation to combat the gang's stranglehold on the country. In the early 2000s, the government launched mano dura, or firm hand policies, characterized by aggressive crackdowns on gang members. Sweeping arrests and long prison sentences became common as law enforcement sought to dismantle the gang structures by removing members from the streets. However, these policies often resulted in overcrowded prisons, inadvertently turning them into breeding grounds for more gang activity. However, the truce faced skepticism from the public and criticism for granting concessions to the gangs, which some argued only legitimized their power. As the truce unraveled, violence surged again, forcing the government to reassess its approach. In 2015, a new plan, El Salvador Seguro, or Secure El Salvador, was introduced, focusing on prevention, rehabilitation, and reintegration alongside continued law enforcement efforts. This plan aimed to address the root causes of gang membership, such as poverty and lack of opportunities, while also strengthening the police force with better training and resources. Despite these efforts, the gangs proved to be resilient, adapting to government tactics and finding new ways to exert their influence. On the streets, outreach centers known as Casa de la Cultura, or Houses of Culture, became sanctuaries for young people, providing safe spaces for learning and recreation away from the influence of gangs. Activities like music, dance, and theater enriched participants' lives and promoted cultural identity and community cohesion. Now, before you leave, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified about our latest content.